We have covered the work of Bernard Kurka in episode 507. Today we will review his 1925 The Queen of Goblet Mountain. We see Frenchman Rolf Recamier hard at work in his chemical laboratory trying to find the source of all matter. But there's an explosion and a strange corporeal fog covers the entire room. He thinks his dog is dead, but he only sleeps for 3 days, as Recamier discovers a metal that can be lighter than air if electrified, and produces narcotic gases and violent explosives. He enthusiastically plans to give his discovery over to France so it can benevolently rule the world. His friend Eugene Gamelin has to remind him that it tried to do so under Robespierre and Napoleon, and well, it didn't go great. Suddenly a German doctor shows up and tries to buy Recamier's invention. He refuses, so the two men are kidnapped a few days later, as Recamier is pronounced dead and Gamelin is suspected of being his murderer. They awaken in an ostensibly French fortress, pressured by the French defense minister to build them an anti-gravity metallic zeppelin. Recamier does, but notices the soldiers are really Germans in disguise, so he has the Germans build it and runs off with it. When landing in France to restock for a major trip around the world, Gamelin forgets he is wanted for Recamier's murder, so he has to escape the police with the man they think he murdered. Flying over the ocean, they notice a boat out in the middle of nowhere, and find 2 unconscious women inside named Eve and Ines. They had been blown off course by a storm and were about to die. They also note their liberated mindset and say how they will never love a man nor marry one out of pure gratitude. As they fly about, Ines is possessed by the will of a woman calling herself Lakme, Queen of the Goblet Mountain, inviting them to her country. After looking in the Sahara for no reason, they find the conical Goblet Mountain at the pole inside of a volcano. Coming into a spring country, they are greeted by men wearing togas who call themselves Etruscans. Their ancestors came to the pole after the Roman conquest of Etruria, and they now live in an ideal society ruled over by Queen Lakme and her mortal grandfather, the supreme judge whom no one ever sees. I'd like to note we see barely any of Etruria despite spending half the book there. Upon seeing Lakme, Recamier falls madly in love with her, to the chagrin of Ines, who has loved him in secret despite all her vows. Lakme meanwhile loves him too, having spied on him for quite a while. But Ojara, the captain of the guard, would wed Lakme instead, and his evil uncle Rakana leads Recamier inside a mountain, where he torments him with visions and leaves him insane and on the verge of killing himself. But he gets better. Ojara tries to lead a palace revolt to force Lakme to marry him, but Recamier and his friends have guns, so that goes about as well as you think. Only their flying ship Invictus was stolen by Ines, whose note says she'd rather want him to die than be with another woman, and asks him to think of her as he dies. Rakana, who was supposed to be universally disliked, somehow rallies the whole population against their queen for no reason, but Lakme's grandfather shrivels him to dust and the revolt falters. He introduces himself as the Count of Cagliostro, and sends Recamier and his friends to save the world from a German superweapon bent on wiping out all life on Earth. Their ship stops the German offensive single-handedly, but when the European powers would forcefully disperse Germans across the whole world against their will to make them stop existing as a people, Recamier says he will wage war on any country not devoted to peace, and they all go right back to Etruria.